Welcome to the third training session under the Technological Infrastructures Capacity Programme. We wish you a positive session.
So we will be also repeating and insisting in some common concepts all along the presentation. So let's take a close look to this slide. In the creation phase, is my technology new? We have some patentability reports available to do that, to see what my competitors are doing. In collaborations, what can I and cannot share? A confidentiality agreement should always be on the table, that's for sure. But also, it helps if your technology is being patented or you filed a patent application, a protection application for your technology. And since the moment you file the application, the technology will be protected. So you may talk with your partners about the contents of that application. You can just give them the file. That would be also good, because as soon as your application is filed, you already got provisional protection for it. So both, it helps if your technology is protected, and a confidentiality agreement should always be there, talking with partners. Now, when should I protect? As soon as possible. You've got to have a proof of concept for your technology, and that varies from sector to sector, from your technology to another technology. We'll see later that you may protect your technology at the very first stages that you have it, or you may need some more development to be able to protect it. It depends on the sectors, as I say. So how much will it cost me to protect? This question has a link to where should I protect. Well, by the time of validity, your PCT application, and you get into national phases in the countries, that will come into already 40,000, 50,000 euro. You better have a financial partner by that time. And then also the prosecution in the different countries is also that changed a lot. Prosecution in the US, it's very expensive. Now in Europe, since tomorrow, 1st of March, the unitary patent is coming into force, and that will save a lot of costs in translations when validation in the different countries of Europe. And also there are other countries that have a limited number of official actions, and their protection, their prosecution there is not that expensive, for example, Latin America. So at the beginning, when you file your application, you may have a European application for 2,000, 3,000 euro. That's affordable. Then you get into the PCT. Prosecution saying from 4,000 to 6,000. That's also affordable. And as I said, 30 months from priority, you've got to get into the national phases, and the cost high a lot, yeah, it's more higher. So how should I protect okay, the patent system is quite flexible. You've got a typical patent to be filed, or you may choose a utility model if you think that your inventive state is not so strong. Or you can also protect by secret, typically blockchain now, depending on, if, say, for example, if you have a process invention, because if you have a product and you can control that product in the market, you may control the eventual infringements. But if your invention is a process, it might be more difficult to control which competitors are using that process that you've published in your patent application. So you may not take profit to your protection if everybody infringes, and you can't control that. So for process inventions, is now are typically like the figure more appropriate for protecting a process is a blockchain or secret. Where should I protect? You should protect in the country of production, in the country of marketing, and the country of commercialization of your technology. You don't have to protect worldwide. Just choosing the particular countries that cover all the production and the commercialization stages of your technology. That's typical. We are for that. I mean, typical strategy for protection you have to consider. Now, about the exploitation, how can I monetize your protection, your technology? That's a very hard and long negotiations with your partners. That's a very difficult issue. Which market should I go? As I told you, where should I protect? Well, actually, if you're prosecuting in a production country, because this comes along with the strategy. If you're prosecuting in a production country and you don't get protection of your patent, you don't get a grant for your application in that country, then you may have to change your whole strategy of production and commercialization, because you've got to go to a different country for production. So, as I said, we'll come along with this idea again later in the presentation. How will my competitors use my technology? As I said, if you can control that, you can control your partners. If you can control the sales of your licensee of your technology, that's fine. There are several tools that you can use. What you cannot, if you've made a right strategy of protection and production for your technology, you shouldn't have any breach. You may control all applications of your technology and eventual infringements. As I said, there's many different commercial tools to control that. Now, what are my employees doing? If you're protecting a process by a secret, by blockchain, as I said before, you should control also, this goes together with the whole software and the whole system that you've got to have implemented in your company, so as to ensure that your employees, when you change company or when you leave, don't take that technology with them and use them for industrial espionage. Now, this is the clue idea of all this process, the strategy of exploitation of your product must be aligned with the IP protection strategy associated to them. Aligned means aligned in concept, aligned in time, should be flexible, depending on the grant that you become in the different countries you're trying to protect. Not only for you make it not only for getting a grant of the patent of the protection, but also because that grant could be only partial. So the more flexible you are in production and commercialization and the different markets you may get in, that will be much profitable to you. And to be flexible on the markets you get in, you should have, or you may have, if you can, new ideas for the use of your technology, not be only directed to one sector, but to multi-sectors, to different sectors, so that you have more possibilities for commercialization of the technology. This will be the central idea of the presentation. So, in a quick overview, you have thought, you have ideated a technology, you know what you want to do, or you just have got results from your research. Then should identify your technical problems, your first technical problems at the lab stage. You may be solving your problems, select them, until you get to a proof of concept of your product, where you can say that proof of concept has gone successfully. You've got to formulate and plan different codes, evaluate different applications in society, in the market, and finally implementing those applications. Each stage here is long, complicated. You've got to be very careful for success. As I said, the business plan that you're launching on your product has got to contemplate your innovation strategy as well as your IP strategy, which at least with inventors that we deal with in Spain, at least, is not done. Is a subject to be done there and to work, because they're very good in, some of them very good in innovation strategy, but when you get to the protection strategy, to IP strategy, the strategies they get are not always the best ones, and then later comes the problems. Yeah, so it's got to be run at the same time. The key factors for value creation are your technology, the market, and the legal defense of your technology. We will not get into legal aspects in this presentation, just contemplate the relation between the technology and the market. So this is another way to put the first slide that we discussed on. At the creation phase, is the technology innovative? Technological feasibility, you've got to have experimental results, at least at the lab stage. What are the trends? What are the competing technologies? It's not strange, it's not rare that once the inventors have the technology, they have the results, then they like move their site up and see what their competitors are doing and find out that someone has made exactly the same as they've done. Yeah. So, and by that point, there are some resources put in the technology and time, and everything can get for nothing. So at the very beginning, when you start getting results or you have the idea, it's very advisable to contact us and perform a patentability analysis of the technology in patent data search databases. They are open, some of them are open, and some of them are private, by pay. Anyway, there are good databases for all subjects. You may try to find. I come from the technological sector, and there are bases there for searching for chemical formula, or searching for, of course, keywords. We'll see that. It's quite well performed. A patentability analysis can give you a lot of information of what competitors are doing, and then choose your, of course, your modality of protection, the patent, trade secret. If you want to some of them, you can combine some of them. You may ask for a trademark, you may ask for a patent application and complete it with some designs also of your. So you may have a portfolio, a quite solid portfolio. If you have a patent, you have a trademark for your company, you have design for your product, and if you want, say, for example, you want to protect your process by blockchain, and you've made a search of patentability search of all that technology, and then you go solid into the market, or at least you got more factors, variables to decide on the direction you want your technology to move forward. At the exploitation phase, you've got to know, or this is all the way around, by the degree of the development of your technology, you will be deciding your exploitation moment, so to say, when to put that technology in the market. Now, this is very important. Am I infringing third-party rights? Well, I'll explain that. You may know that a patent is not a positive right. Like if you have a patent, that does not enable you to put your technology in the market, but rather it's a negative right. It gives you exclusivity for anyone to come into your technology, right? But by the time you want to put that technology in the market, you may be infringing some previous rights of wider scope than your patent. And to the owner of that patent, to the owner of that right, you have to deal with, or you have to make an agreement or pay some rights. For example, say that you've discovered a compound that is already in the market and well-known not compound. You haven't discovered that compound, but you've discovered that it's very good for treating cancer. Now, you've got a patent for that, you've got protection for that compound treating cancer, but when you try to put it in the market, you discover that the inventor that found that compound protected the compound and also protected its use as a medicament for every disease, as a general use as medicament. So, and that patent is still valid. So, when you want to put that compound for the treatment of cancer into the market, you're infringing, or say you're under the scope of the patent covering the general use as medicament. So you have to deal with the owner of that patent to get into the market. How do I know if I infringe any third-party rights? Well, by, as I said before, the freedom to operate reports, which is performs a search very similar to the patentability report, but the approach is completely different. We'll come into that. We have, as I said before, we have a whole chapter on freedom to operate reports. I'll be explain that to you. And back to the degree of development of your technology. How do I know where am I? Well, there's some what we call technology readiness level, TRL, that will give you a nice picture, so exactly where you are for if you're ready to put the technology and how much work, how much resources you still have to put in your technology to be able to go to the market. Okay, so again with the same idea, in a licensing process of intellectual protection, when you're dealing with partners, you want someone to buy your technology. Maximizing the translation value of a patent involves identifying the services or the applications of your product that can add most value to the invention. That's a way to say how flexible is your technology, what applications do they have, And how keen are you to explain it to your partner or to your to the company that's going to buy your technology? We have a very smart example now. I show it to you. So at the valorization of the patent, you should be considering the most promising fields of application. Of course, you've got to know the development stage of your technology, and you've got to know if there's any market barriers, because when you deal with your partner, they're expecting all this information from you. So it's important that you say, it's not the same that you say this technology is free to operate in the market, than saying, well, we should be considering 3 patents in the next 5 years that we're infringing, and we've got to, at least at the first development of the first term of putting the invention in the market, first 5 years, say, for example, we will be infringing 3 patents to which we have to pay rights, or like, I'm offering you this technology, but you still have to deal with the owners of 3 patents that are covering the scope of my invention. All of these have a direct and important impact on the monetizing of your invention, of your technology, and we'll get, I think we'll have a slide also to get deeper in that aspect. Let's go to technological valorization of the invention. So it is not only common for technologies to be developed for a particular purpose, but also it is a need to solve a state-of-the-art problem to get protection by patent. So researchers always, naturally, like you have an invention, you develop a technology to solve a problem you may have, or the sector has. But the more applicability your invention has in other technological areas, the more value it has. So the identification of all applications of the technology increases the opportunities and positively impact on its valorization in a very complicated way. All these aspects and all these negotiations are considering very different factors, and need to be very careful on this. Let's go to the urea case, to our example, which is very representative of all this I'm saying now. Well, I introduce you to the formula of urea, which has a very important biological role. Now, the process to produce this compound is pictured there. Hope you see it. You take ammonia and you combine it with carbon dioxide to get to a compound, then you change the conditions of reaction of that compound, then you get the urea combustion plus water. Interesting here is that you use this carbon dioxide, CO2. And you see there's a picture, picture for production of urea, where CO2, it is the CO2 compressor and the input of CO2. So you buy actually the CO2 and you put it in the compressor and introduce it, input it in the reactor as such. Now, comes in 2019, came this invention using, it was a urea production process using CO2 produced by oxycombustion. Like, the idea was to introduce a unit into the okay, into the production process here, instead of supplying the CO2, just generating the CO2 in a new unit, integrated into the flow of production for urea. Yeah? So, in short, oxy-fuel combustion is when fuel is burned using oxygen directly instead of air. So you get a huge amount of CO2 that can be used here in the production of urea. Okay, so the requirements for requirements of environmental protection are increasingly, and need to careful monitoring CO2 emissions, and the adoption of solutions characterized by high energy efficiency and the reduction of pollutants and CO2 emissions is important. Now, none of these arguments will not give you patentability. Typically, arguments for if you create a technology that is recyclable will not give you patentability as such, and all these nice arguments, unfortunately, do not give you patentability as the way or with policies that patent offices has nowadays. So the way to sell this, how to get protection for this invention, for this technology, it was obviously changing the arguments, it was improving the efficiency of the non-urea production processes plants, yeah, and to increase their flexibility in terms of flow rate of the supply. You see, there's no planet-friendly arguments here. You see that the oxy-combustion process is much more efficient and beneficial way compared to the prior art, who limited to buy the CO2 from a supplier and introducing into the plant. So the point is that they created on they figure out a unit to be inserted into the urea plant to produce CO2 on site. And this was just okay. So let's make a stop here. Collaboration with researchers, collaboration with inventors, for us, coming from an agency, is very important, very relevant. Of course, we're prepared to read scientific papers of every specialization of technology, but we will not get the same level of inventors that have been working with that technology for years. So we need to fix that. We need actually in the biosector, when we do a patentability analysis, for example, patentability search for patents, we always ask the inventors to analyze them. We read them through, it's fine, we understand them, but we also always ask the researchers to give us their comments, their impressions for that we found. So we make the search by keywords in patent databases and analyze the IPCs, that the International Patent Classifications Index, which I will explain you what they are now. Make an online research and then request the inventors to give us their feedback of what we found. So as experts in the field, that's what I mean, they're most likely to know the potential applications for the technology, or at least indicate where to look. Where to look is our job. We'll do that. Researchers only have to make an interpretation and analyze the documents that we bring them, and know the potential application of the technology, and then we'll direct them, we'll help them to see the different new applications of the technology. So in the case of urea, about the IPCs, we'll see, I'll explain you how to make search in the different databases, in which keywords and IPCs play a major role. In fact, we do the searches at open databases. For example, me, when I'm drafting a patent application, we do them only by keywords. But when we have to make a patentability report or an infringement report, then we use more directed and professionalized IPC method. Yeah? So what's an IPC? IPC for patent application is, for example, that code number there, where the first pack corresponds to a general field, and to that, in this case, CO7C for organic chemistry. Now to that, there's a numerical code, in this case 273/00, preparation of urea derivatives containing any of the groups, wherever, and in particular the /04, preparation of urea from carbon dioxide and ammonia, which is right the process that we're looking at. So in this code number, you've got synthesized your technology. So if you may, it will ease your job, because you may introduce in the database 7 or 8 keywords, or you may just find this code, this IPC, introduce the IPC, and give you a bunch of patents applications that are related with the preparation of urea from carbon dioxide and ammonia, right? So it's a way to synthesize in a code all aspects you may be considering of our technology. And of course, it will not define your invention, but help you to look for similar patents or similar publications dealing with the technology. For example, the YPO has got open databases where you can introduce several fields that for reducing. Especially important is the year from 2018 to 2022. Why? Because we'll see there in patent infringements reports, it's very important that the patent application or the modality of protection that competitors have used are valid or not valid anymore. They have a particular term for validity. So back to the example, some of the current applications of urea is, as you see there, is a general, it's a very important compound in the industry. Now we see there, as I told you before, global emissions from greenhouse gases have exponentially increased over the years, and the industry is thinking and solving this issue by new ways of application of the CO2. I'll show you a graph now, but some of them are more likely than others. Typically, CO2 is used in underground extraction of oil, although that has several drawbacks. And same captured carbon can be used in the production of urea for produce different chemicals or fuels. In this graphic, you see that EOR is that geological use for extraction of oil, which is a big percentage, but the production of urea is the main use of available CO2 in the planet. So the more applications we find for urea, the more CO2 that we'll be using in our industry, in the technology sectors. There's a big demand for CO2 actually. So, and that this is why they mentioned the case of our example to introduce a unit there for the production of area had was so much valued and in the market. Let's get into the TRLs. Take a deeper look in this tool here. These are technological readiness levels, measuring the maturity level of our technology. Depending on our stage, depending on where we are, we will be ready to put them in the market or not, or we may have a glance of how much resources and money we have to still invest in our technology. Typically there are 9 levels, from 1 to 9, but you may not have to reach TRL 9 to put the technology in the market or to try a new proof of concept. So this is just a tool to get your technology to where you want. You see there from 1 to 9, TRL 1 and 2 refer to basic technological research, so where the idea is formulated and your first results. TRL 3 and 4 just go for your first proof of concept in the lab, your first experiments. 5 and 6 go to the pilot scale of production in the industry, depending on the technology. 7, 8, 9 then go to the industrial application and bulk production of the technology, and then introduction of other factors to be considered, like commercial issues, and considering that by that stage you are already enabled to put your technology in the market. Now, who is able or who is capable to perform these different stages for your technology? Well, first of that, as I said, the TRL shows the different stages of your technology, of development, to see how robust this is. A technology in an early stage of development means greater risks, more time, more resources, and high development costs, which will be something to be considered when you try to find a partner or you try to sell your technology. They are going to evaluate in which TRL are you to define the money that they still have to put in the technology and the risks they're facing. Now, this schema here is a bit confusing. Just think that the higher the TRL, the lower the technological risk to be faced. Yeah? Okay, which is also relative, because, for example, when developing a medicament, you may be already in the clinical stages for a clinical study just before putting it in the market, and it's not rare that a medicament fails that clinical study, which are very expensive and it's got a very high risk, and by that stage the medicament would be in a high TRL, and yet, as I said, it's not strange that medicaments fail the phase 3 clinical phases and cannot put in the market because of that. So, okay, take the TRL just as a picture. depending on the technology, gives you more or less clarification. Now, who's going to perform these different stages of TRL? Up to TRL 4, remember 1 and 2 were the ideation of the idea of your technology, the concept, and 3 and 4 are already laboratory test and your first proof of concept for the idea. And these can be performed in the university or in the public institute. And by some technologies, you will be able to protect already at that stage and to file an application, patent application, or the modality you decide to, already at the university level. Then prototyping, it corresponds to the industry, will face stages 5 and 6 for a first approach, and of course the highest levels of TRL, then you should have a partner, industrial partner, to perform your invention or your technology. That's why collaboration between universities and the industry is so important, because by the time that, like, industries do not generally perform the work of universities, but they take that job. They start at the prototyping typically. If we don't have a clear link between the industry and the university, there are many good inventions are lost in the way. Think that university may afford the drafting and filing of a patent application. So, for example, they can afford the first stages of prosecution, and they can even afford, with some conditions, the filing of a PCT application. What a university will not afford is the national stages of protection of that invention. So they will only cover the first 30 months from the filing of the application of that technology. In 30 months, if they don't get a partner, that invention will be typically lost and for nothing, made public, but has not come to any profit or for any industrial use, so to say. So, I said, and that's the kind of job that the industry will never do. So the link between the industry and the university usually is a strong dissemination of the development of technology in a country, in a community. Now, if you thought that by completing the tier levels, are you ready to put everything in the market? Okay. Answer is no. You should consider also commercial CRL levels. That, okay, we will not get into that now, but there's another development to be considering. Yeah. So you get, as you say there in the link at the left side, so technological readiness up to 9. You've got your proof of concept. You've got your technology at an industrial scale. And then the commercial readiness can take even longer, much longer than the development of the technology. Think of international commercial interests and introduction into the different countries, just to show up. So, which TRL should I achieve for my invention to be protected into a patent? Depends on the complexity of your technology. This is, okay, focusing only in biotechnology. For fertilizer and resins, for example, to be put into market, you need a field test, and that can be done typically by level 6 or higher. Remember, level 6 was already a pilot scale. You need to the best way for protection, or the most solid your invention will be, if you have a test on the field to see how your fertilizing is working. For cosmetics, you may only get to level 4. University can perform this level, but typically involves an in vivo experiments that determine the level 4 of the TRL, of the development of technology, to see if cosmetics are working. You need some experiments. I say cosmetics, but some others also too, to see if they're working properly or not, and you can launch that. You can move forward with the protection of that technology. And surprisingly or not surprisingly, for pharmaceutical applications, you may only get to some laboratory results in a Petri plate. See if a compound works in a particular cell line, and that could give you just the hint or the results able to be protected. And from these results, the system allows you to protect the pharmaceutical composition, the use of that compound in the different diseases related to the cell line in which you're proving that compound. And if you're the first one that identifying that compound for pharmaceutical purposes, you, as I said, in some countries, in some regions, for example Europe, you may protect what we call the first medical use, that is the general use as a medicament for any disease. And you can do that. You can file the application already by TRL2 with your first results. And why is this? Because by pharmaceutical, I mean, what advantage has this at least? I don't know if it's why, but what advantages has this? Is because the development of that compound for a final pharmaceutical application is so damn expensive and long that it's good to have your protection at the very stages, at the very start of the technology. We have the case now, actually. We have a client that discovered a biomarker for Alzheimer, which has a particularities of very easy to detect and in a saliva sample. And he wanted to protect it worldwide. And so we drafted a patent application and tried to, they paid, they had, they had a muscle, like they paid the national faces for almost, all every important country playing with this, Asia, Latin America, of course Europe, the US. And it's already 6-7 years from that, and we're still having grants for from some different countries that at the beginning, like in their normative, in their legislation, they do not allow the use of biomarkers for the diagnosis of diseases, and yet they're accepting some different ways of drafting the claims so that they may accept some partial protection of that technology. Some of them accept the diagnosis used in a particular way. Some of them you've got to choose the biological sample where you do that test, and some of them only allow you to protect the kit for perform the diagnosis test. Well, this is a long way of protection that's driven and conditioning their commercializing and their search for partners strategy all way long. So the protection strategy should start as soon as possible, because you never know. You've got to go to your partners with a clear commercializing strategy and saying, okay, I have my technology protected in so many countries, and you can use them right away if you buy the technology from now on. So it's good that for pharmaceutical applications you've got TRL, early TRLs to protect them. In the electronical sector, for example, is even sooner, even earlier. In this sector, electronically, the inventor may have just an idea of how to combine several devices to get a technical effect on the data processing or something. And only with that idea, not even laboratory results, because they cannot perform laboratory experiments via electronically by an electronical device. Only with that idea, they can file a patent application. So it depends on the sectors. Yeah? We'll get deeper to that later. Okay, so how do I do the technological transfer? How to do technological transfer? There are several alternatives. You may sell your technology or license it or form a spin-off. You may look for partners for co-developing your technology or just cooperating with you in your facilities. Or you may convince a joint venture to put the money in your technology. Each one of these requires different levels of TRL. Otherwise, you will not convince them. For example, for selling your technology, any TRL is possible if you get the interest of an industry, of your partner. Licensing also. To make a spin-off is likely if you got already some 4 or 5 TRL level for your technology, so you can have a little expectations for commercialization. Now, you want to find partners, you better have a medium stage of TRL 2. If your partner is going to put money and get involved in your project, which is also awful difficult. But by the tools that we have now, you may get partners from international partners from other countries who are willing to put the money in technological innovation. That's not that difficult nowadays. But if you want to convince a joint venture to put the money there, you better have a medium-high TRL level for your technology. Otherwise, this is the way they work, these joint ventures, managing funds from big collaborators. Okay, now, if you want to sell the technology, you can do it at any level, at any stage of TRL. But obviously, the upfront money that you will get for that technology, and this is a picture of upfront money, will not be the same. You can imagine that. This is this is just a picture to give you an estimation. Let's get into that. If you get, say, for the previous example, that compound using, you've got some results for cancer, for example, and a pharmaceutical company is buying your patent. But you only have lab results, so you don't have much. So the upfront money for that technology, the money that they're going to give you, by need, will be low. That doesn't mean that if the technology is developed and put in the market, you will only get this little money for that, because it's just upfront money is low, and as the technology will be passing or will be completing stages of proof, clinical stages, and the expectations are higher, then the the money you will receive for that technology will increase. And of course, if it's put into the market, then you will get a particular percent of the sales. Typically, not much for an inventor, say, or for an inventor for an association, for the applicant of the patent application, between 1%, 2.5%. That means a lot of money by pharmaceutical applications. Now, if you've got your technology in TL 4, 6, 7, of course, the upfront money will be higher, but maybe that the money you get for the other stages of developing is not that big until you get to the commercializing phase. If you put resources in your technology to get to TRL6, you are entitled to ask for much money from the beginning to compensate your cost. And everybody understands that. But the investors, okay, we have another case of a client, a small client, well, actually a particular, working with a friend who's an engineer, that they are trading now, they're trying to catch a very strong Chinese investor. And they're driving their conversations unilaterally, which is okay, doesn't matter. We got a US protection for them, but not a Chinese protection. So their technology was a surgical method which can only be protected in the US, not in China or not in the rest of the world, anyway. But we still have a good relationship with them, so they're showing us how the conversations are going. He's pretending, the Chinese, to give them an upfront money of $1 million for that, and having participation of the subsequent evolution of their idea to be put into the market. The point is that actually they don't have any protection to offer. They're only off because, as I said, in China it's not protected. They're only offering their collaboration, technical collaboration with the Chinese. So I'm sure that Chinese company, which is very big, could develop that technology further without him or without them. But they're being polite, like they want to collaborate. They think that this person can make a contribution, so they're playing with him. They want them in the project. But in my opinion, he's completely out of reality when asking for a payment of $1 million from the very beginning. Yeah? Companies do not deal in that way. And the answer of the Chinese, which I've already seen, is logically, well, we don't used to work with upfront payments so high. I offer you a percentage in the sales, or to cover your development, say, we may talk about 50,000 euro at the beginning, the next stage for 20,000 euro, and then a percentage in the sales. This is how usually conversations are dealt. Yeah. Actually, I have to call him to suggest him stop acting like that. By the way, back to the question, what can I protect? Well, in these conversations that you have with your partners, you may introduce as blockchain all relevant mails that you change with them and all the information that you're sharing with them. Because this is interesting. They don't have a patent. They don't have protection for that technology. There's a device. The surgical method is protected in the US. The device to make that surgical method didn't find inventive step in the different countries they trade. For example, in Europe, so they don't have a patent for that. Also not in China. But as, of course, they have confidentiality agreement for conversations, but as they don't have that technology protected, it's good that any contribution that you do with your partners be protected by blockchain. And any change you do in the blockchain system will generate a new hash. So the protection is effective, and for the future, if your partner intends to change conditions or not fulfilling the part of the contract in some way, you may show him, or you may go into court with blockchain registers of your previous conversations and the previous technology that you've contributed to the project. Yeah. So actually everything, you can protect everything by, so to say, there's a different modality of protection for everything that you achieve in the development of your technology, including, as I say, conversations with your partners, mails, and different stuff. Backed in this schema, by co-developing agreements or technological cooperations, you are still involved in the evolution of the technology, and that's why I put a clock there. Of course, by joint venture, you're still involved. As soon as you sell your technology or you give a license, you're not anymore involved in that. So you just only have to worry about the monetary issue. How will you receive compensation for the technology? So let's get into this FTO Freedom to Operate report. I'm going to read, as I said before, same idea several times. Please be patient. Okay. A company that manufactures, sells, or uses products or industrial process may face the situation, or may prevent the situation, should prevent the situation of their technology being infringed as a legal issue, as every law. You should know your laws, and should comply with them. No matter in the language that they're published. And I refer here to the unitary patent. The unitary patent coming into force tomorrow, since tomorrow, in Europe, allows those signing countries, among which Portugal is, may give or will give legal validity to documents not written in Portuguese. Okay. And you've got to know that, and you've got to know the scope of these other patents that you may be infringing by putting your technology in the market. Although you may have only the expectation of a local, local expectations in Portugal, you should know these documents and evaluate them. Well, to prevent that, the best tool is a Freedom to Operate report in the markets. In the market that is your technology applicable, because otherwise, if you don't do that, you face litigation costs that may be way more expensive. There's a little mistake there by the Patent County Court in England. Should add a K there. Anyway, this is quite expensive. Again, back to unitary patents here. If you have an infringement case in any of these countries, France, Netherlands, Germany, from now on, it will be litigated in one court, European court, deciding for your infringement, which has several advantages in terms of cost, but also several drawbacks. Because if until now, and still now, patents are territorial. The rights given by a patent are territorial by country. Now, with this unitary patent, if someone sues you and files a nullity action before court in any country signed in the unitary patent agreement, you may lose your rights in the whole Europe, in the whole area, or all signing countries. Yeah. So in terms of cost, it's beneficial. In terms of consequences of the result of the resolution of that trial, may be damaging. So the FTO means how to carry out a particular commercial activity without infringing previous IP rights of a third party. And when we talk about FTO, we're talking about infringement report. There's a difference between an infringement report and an FTO. I hope I can get to that a bit later. Okay, why is so important? Okay, what are the difference between a patentability report and an FTO? The patent protection is territorial, as I said before, country by country, whereas in the patentability issues, when you file patents to see if your technology is patentable or not patentable, you deal with features like novelty, inventive step, which are not territorial. You have to consider them. Like a publication made in Japan may kill the novelty of your invention, and you cannot protect anywhere if that aspect of that or that feature of your invention is being published in Japan. However, a patent granted in Japan will not affect your rights for putting your technology into an European market. Okay, so if you're trying to put your technology into the market in France, the infringement report should only consider those applications, whether granted or not yet granted, that have or will have an application in Europe, or in France particularly. The search may be similar, the approach is completely other way. Now, patents have a limited duration. Again, difference between an infringement report and a patentability report. At patentability reports, anything that has been published in history can affect your patentability of your technology, the novelty of your technology. By infringement, if the patent is already expired, then it's free to commercialize, up to you. And also the patents are limited in scope. So you've got to take a close look to how the claims are granted, whereas in patentability reports, you may take a look to the claims and also to the description of the application. Yeah. So okay, I don't want to make it too complicated here. Just focusing the freedom to operate. Just take into account that the territorial aspect of the patents, the duration of the patent, and the scope of the claims. Yeah, that will affect your technology. Now, the FTO provides a legal opinion. That's what we do. Important here is the affecting the production, the use, the sale or import of a product in a specific geographical area. As I said before, if linking it to the previous concepts here, if you find a patent, valid patent in force, operating in China, you may not be able to produce your technology in China. So you have to change China for India, for example. Yeah. So not only it is not only your protection strategy, the protection strategy of your technology, whether it has been or you have expectations to be granted in China or India, but also whether there is a previous patent in any of these countries, valid patent, that will allow you or not allow you to produce in India or in China. So these are two aspects that you have to consider. The IP strategy, as I said before, it's got to run at the same time as your technological strategy, but also an FTO report can give you a very valid, a very useful site to decide where you have to or you can produce and put your technology into the market. Whether you have to pay rights to a previous patent or not, with condition absolutely the cost of producing your technology. So the intention of the FTO is to minimize the risk of infringing other property rights. Okay, and then we get where I wanted to do. At the first time, how do we do a freedom to operate report? So first, a clearance search using databases. We introduce the term condition, 21 years, say 20 years of validity plus 1 of priority. So we identify the relevant patents, and we take a look at the registration status of these patents, okay? And now we make the infringement report. Okay. In biotechnology, in biosector, what we do in the agency is typically infringement report. That means that, for example, if my client has a composition of, say, 10 compounds, and 2 of them are microbiological, are bacteria, I can find that these bacteria are protected already, or yes, are protected in a valid patent for that medical use as the same as my client is pretending by other previous patents. So in this kind of composition, each one of the components might be directly protected by 1 patent. Of course, I will have to take care on the way claims are being drafted and the protection of these patents, but what I mean is that the relation is 1 by 1, or should be 1 by 1. Okay, I wouldn't call that an FTO. That's relatively, not too complicated, because as I said, if you find the patent in force, then you've got all the information there. But for example, in electronics, in the electronic sector, you may find or you may create an invention combining several devices to get a technical effect, which is inventive, and you get it protected. But the point is that every device that you're using in your invention in the electronic sector might be protected by 5 or several different patents, because each device is comprises other factors or other little devices, or for example, the use of semiconductors for transmitting a signal, or the application of a semiconductor in a device with size conditions or whatever. Yeah. So in the electronic sector, you may find that to put your invention into the market, you should be considering up to, say, 40, 50 patents valid in the market, are valid in the markets, and also, actually, the owners of that patent are big companies, big electronic companies, technological companies that are very very strong there in your sector, and dealing with them is kind of it's very difficult. I mean, it's kind of a job to be done. Well, and to that 50 patents, you have to add considerations on the claims, considerations on the patent validity term. Well, that's an FTO, and that's why FTOs are so expensive and so difficult to be made, and involve so quite long and, well, I mean, very, very expensive. But that's not what we typically do, for example, in the biotechnological sector. Okay, it's very strange. I have to make a proper FTO. What we usually do in the ANC is, in bio, is infringement reports, so to say. The result is the same. The aim is the same. We are validating or considering how is the market to put your technology in. Will your technology infringe other patents? But the complication, the way to do it, is absolutely different. Again, if there's the report, FTO report, or infringement reports, identify the possible breach and give possible solutions. For example, we may file a patent validation of the patent blocking your freedom to operate, and how and why. Well, if, for example, if we see that there's a European patent blocking your technology, and we are still in the 9th-month term of opposition, we may file an opposition before the EPO, try to put down this patent, or if the patent is already in force, we may go to courts and file a nullity action to that patent. Have to consider it. I mean, we have to study this patent carefully and see if there's any ground for invalidity that will allow us to file this nullity action, or we can initiate some technical redesign action of our technology. In the example I told you, if we have a composition of including 2 bacteria, can we change this bacteria by any other of the family? Can we just avoid one of these bacteria, just mark the composition with just one microbiological agent? What can we do with our invention or with our development? Yeah, to put it in the market in not the best way you have created, but also a valid way. Or we can just get into negotiations with the owner of the patents and get a license or buy the patent, or whatever. Interesting here is cross-selling, cross-licensing. If you're a big company and with research in different areas, and you have to deal with another big company with research in also different areas, you may just get an agreement on, I give you these patents, and you give me the other patents that allow me freedom to operate in my sector, and I will allow you freedom to operate in the sector you're interested in. But you've got to be a big company to do that. So, in summary, we've got to identify competitive advantages of your technology. Ideally, we can figure out some different applications of your technology that will give us great flexibility for future negotiations. We've got to define where's your TRL level, which one you can achieve fast for your first proof of concept and to your quick put into the market. And of course, freedom to operate will liberate you of market barriers. Freedom to operate report will help you for that.
This is the end of this session of the Capacity Programme for Technological Infrastructures. We thank you for your participation and look forward to seeing you in the next.